Fog swirled, obscuring everything in sight except what lay directly before Leah's eyes. A curtain of gray hung from the sky, veiling both sides of the river. She strained to see Xander at the wheel of the 65-foot Conchita. Everyone stayed alert to each sound and movement on the water. At the bow, Leah was to keep watch for floating debris, channel markers, other boats, anything that might threaten them. Her duty was to warn Xander in time for him to maneuver clear. They motored up the Rio Dulce at a jogging pace. The vessel was hidden beneath a shroud, as if clouds had fallen and blanketed the earth. Every leaf sagged beneath water, clinging like a slug. The gloom held everything still, amplifying the gentle plop of droplets striking the surface. No birds flew, no fish leapt. The only creatures moving were aboard with Leah. She stood alone, surprised by the giant drops of dew clinging to her lashes. Looking outward, they glowed like tiny Chinese lanterns before her eyes. Tilting her head, she studied how they held, heavy, perfect, patient, not like tears, which blurred vision in a rush before betraying emotion. These drops waited. Then, one by one, they let go. Gunfire shattered the stillness in Leah's senses. She dropped flat onto the deck, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. She pressed her cheek to the damp wood, breath shallow. Peeking over the gunwale, she strained for the riverbank. Nothing. Only swirling fog. No movement, no sound, but her own breath. Familiar with gunfire, she sniffed for the sharp scent of expelled powder. If it was there, the fog had swallowed it. The mist pinned everything down, cloaking motion and trapping scent like a lid over a simmering pot. Her ears swept the silence. Alert, bat-like, waiting for the world to reveal itself again. "Are you okay?" Mike's voice startled her. "Yeah," Leah whispered. "I don't think any rounds hit the boat or the water. Maybe they weren't firing at us." He leaned closer, trying to keep his Australian accent low, but to Leah it still boomed like kettle drums in her ears. "Normally, the trip from Livingston only takes about 3 hours," he said. "At this snail's pace, we'll be lucky to make it in 5. "We left the dock 3 hours ago," Leah said, glancing around for any sign of movement. "I've never felt time pass so slowly." She had rummaged through the cabin earlier for anything to shield her from the cold, wet, and found an old U.S. Air Force blanket, smelly, coarse, heavy. She pulled it tight around her, grateful at least for its dull blue-gray color. It might help her disappear into the fog. Crouched beside Mike on the deck, she felt heat rising between them. His body close enough, her skin flushed in response. Embarrassingly so. The warmth activated the stench of the blanket, wet dog, mildew, and something sour that clung to her like guilt. She held back a gag, praying he didn't notice. Of all the times to reek like a rotting tent, she risked a glance. His jaw was set, eyes scanning the water, unaware or pretending not to notice. Her stomach clenched. Was it the smell or the way her pulse jumped every time he drew near? "The sun'll burn off the fog soon, and we'll pick up speed. Keep a steady lookout, mate, and try not to get shot." Mike chuckled, heading back to the cockpit. He was right about the sun. Shapes began to emerge in the mist, and by the angle of the light, Leah figured it was close to 11 a.m. She longed to get off the boat, to feel solid ground again. Somewhere they could hide if they needed to. Who fired those shots? Why here? This stretch of river was supposed to be safe for foreigners. Centraga had sent her for damage control, not to dodge bullets. Centraga owned farmland on every continent, an international giant steeped in controversy over genetically modified seeds. Farmers across the globe resisted pressure to plant only Centraga's proprietary crops. The problem? The seeds were sterile. Cross-pollination with heirloom varieties rendered natural crops infertile, erasing generations of resilience in a single harvest. Locals feared dependence, hunger. Centraga claimed its seeds were stronger, able to withstand drought, food, and pests, and feed a growing world. The company had offered a six-figure salary, global travel, and the chance to make an impact. Hard to turn down. Leah landed the job after her work on the 2010 Deepwater Horizon spill. Back then, she managed volatile press briefings and angry shrimpers with little more than a walkie-talkie and a steel spine. Things got heated, but no one had ever fired a weapon at her. Houston training covered talking points and crisis drills. It never mentioned gunfire. Never mentioned what to do if you were caught in a fog on a slow-moving boat with unseen gunmen firing at your hull. She was starting to doubt her decision to accept the job. Wait, come to think of it, no rounds had hit the boat, no splashes in the water, no cracking wood, just noise. Maybe it wasn't even aimed at them. Teenagers firing off in the jungle, hunters, drunk militia playing scare tactics. She had seen stranger things during crisis and had learned early on that not every loud noise meant she was the target. "Hey, you look kind of green. You gonna be okay?" Mike asked. She hesitated. The last thing she wanted was for him to hear the tremor in her voice. Her mouth was dry, her jaw stiff, but she managed to speak. "I'm okay, just not used to hearing gunfire this close." She forced out a breath. "I've heard hunters before, sure, but nothing like that. Who do you think was shooting?" "Could be anybody," Mike shrugged. "Down here you've got leftover Sandinistas from the Contra War in Nicaragua, a handful of cartels fighting over turf, and happy drunk locals who treat guns like fireworks." He sounded casual, but Leah could tell he knew the terrain and its stories. "The Rio Dulce's been used by pirates and ill-mannered ilk for centuries. Cliffs upriver are carved with marks that go back to old Chris Columbus himself." That was more history than she expected. "I had no idea. Are there any good guys left?" "Too right. You're looking at one." He flashed a grin. "Besides, the locals are usually just out for fun. It's the others who'll give you a go about their cause." Mike, an Australian expat mercenary, had been contracted by Centraga as Leah's security escort. He had been right about the sun, too. The fog had burned off completely now, and the heat pressed in like a wet blanket. Leah shrugged off the real one, coarse, smelly, and now unnecessary, and spread it over the cabin roof, securing it with a boat hook so it wouldn't blow away. They were making better time, maybe 6 knots, and the dry warmth on her skin felt like a small mercy. The thought slowed her breathing, eased her shoulders. Mike shrugged off his jacket and tossed it through the open hatch. His white t-shirt clung to a broad chest and tapered waist, then vanished entirely as he peeled it over his head and flung it aside. Leah's heart kicked like a startled bird. Her cheeks flushed, breath catching, as she fought to keep her face neutral. She hadn't been this close to a man in nearly a year, and certainly not a man like Mike Sullivan. He was all sun-warmed muscle and quiet command, the kind of pressure that filled the space without trying. She told herself to look away. She didn't. Instead, she drowned in the sudden and inescapable awareness of him. "Hey, there's our contact," Xander shouted. The boat's vibrations shifted beneath Leah's feet as the engine slipped out of gear, pulling her thoughts back to the job and why she was floating deep into the Paytan jungle of Guatemala. They approached a narrow river, its banks thick with overgrowth. From the eastern shore a narrow panga approached. Its flat bow and small rear platform remind Leah of the John boats she used in Louisiana. "Mike," Xander called from the cockpit, "go forward and drop the anchor. Once it's set, we'll load your gear into the panga." A dark-skinned man guided the panga alongside, tying it off at the stern before climbing aboard. "Hola, ¿qué tal?" he called to Xander in Spanish, with the ease of greeting an old friend. Leah turned to Mike. "Do you know him? Know him like you know Xander?" They stood near the bow, the anchor line now secured. "Nah," Mike said with a shrug. "I know Xander. He's an abo, and this guy's probably kin." "A what?" "Abo. What's that supposed to mean?" Mike looked at her as if she'd missed the obvious. "You know, aboriginal, native. You Yanks used to say Indian. He's from a long line here in Livingston. Trust me, he'll go on for hours about it, especially after a couple of salvavidas." "What do you mean lifesavers?" she asked, puzzled. "Beer," Mike said with a smirk. "Salvavida, it's a brand down here. Good stuff. Those blokes at Centraga didn't tell you much about this place, did they?" "I've been thinking," she said, adjusting the strap on her bag. "There's a whole lot they didn't tell me." They moved toward the stern to see what was unfolding between Xander and the man who had just climbed aboard. "Mike, this is Alejandro," Xander said, gesturing casually. "He'll be your guide through the jungle to the coffee plantation." He didn't even glance at Leah, let alone introduce her. Sliding a pair of sunglasses from her pocket, she eased them on. Not so much for the sun as to study Alejandro without giving anything away. He didn't look like the other locals she'd seen along the river. His skin was a deep golden brown, more bronze than red, sun-bleached blonde hair streaked with white that didn't look dyed, framed eyes that were striking, green hazel bright, unreadable. Something about him felt off. Nothing threatening, exactly, just different. And Xander's casual omission of her name, that didn't sit right either. Alejandro crossed his arms, leaned back slightly, then turned, slow, deliberate, and locked eyes with her through the tint of her sunglasses. The intensity of his gaze made her flinch. He unnerved her. Not just the stare, but the way he seemed to study her, weigh her. Her eyes darted to the machete strapped at his belt. "Don't worry," he said, voice low and steady. "You'll be safe with me." It felt like he had read her mind. She swallowed and forced a smile. "Okay, my name is Leah." Xander didn't introduce us. "I know who you are," he said. "I got orders to keep you safe." Her brows knit. "I thought you were a local." His eyes narrowed. "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" She hesitated. "Sorry, your accent. It sounds American." "Nope." He didn't blink. "Went to school there, but I'm from Livingston." He gave her a once-over, calm, assessing, then turned without another word and climbed back into his panga. "Well, señorita," Xander said behind her, "this is as far as I take you. Now you go with Alejandro. Vaya con Dios." He disappeared into the aft cabin, already raising the VHF mic to his mouth. Leah exhaled slowly and climbed down into the heavily laden boat. It sat so low in the water she hesitated, worried her weight might tip it. "It won't sink," Alejandro said, as if he'd heard the thought the moment it formed. "That I promise you." His uncanny perception made her stomach flutter, not with attraction, but with unease. She moved carefully over the baskets and boxes and found a place on the center seat, forcing her breathing steady, forcing herself not to look back. Alejandro pushed the throttle into full speed and spun the boat in half circle away from the Conchita. Now that the fog had lifted, the river was alive. Small sailboats, pangas, kayaks, motorboats darting in all directions, each leaving a wake of whitecaps. Leah gripped the seat until her knuckles whitened. Each time they hit the wake of a larger vessel, her stomach lurched, floating up, then slamming down as the wooden hull slapped the water again and again. It felt like riding a bucking bull carved from the jungle timber and pure adrenaline. The crossing couldn't have taken more than a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. As the panga angled toward a rough landing point, Leah jumped up a second too soon. She misjudged the motion, stumbled backward at the sudden shift in balance, and nearly toppled into the river. "Hang on there, girlie!" Mike's arm shot out and caught her just in time. He hauled her back into the boat and steadied her against the nearest surface, an old ice cooler strapped near the stern. "We don't want you to become a tasty meal for the crocs now, do we?" he said, flashing her a crooked grin. They landed at a cleared patch of the riverbank, no more than an acre wide. A single thatched roof hut sat near the back edge of the clearing where dense jungle began to reclaim the land. As Leah stepped onto the uneven ground, her head pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The afternoon heat wrapped around her like a wet blanket, the humidity leaving her gasping like a fish tossed onto a sun-baked pier. She turned instinctively to scan the river, searching for the Conchita, her link to the world she knew.